I was preparing dinner when my husband brought his mistress to our home. He calmly said, "You can leave." This story is deeply shocking. I devoted my entire life to my family, and in one day, I lost everything: my husband, my son, my home. But what I did in response made even the most cynical viewers shudder. Have your tissues ready, this story will break your heart, and then make you give a standing ovation.
Subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories ahead about strong women who did not break under the pressure of circumstances. And be sure to write in the comments, could you forgive such betrayal?
Paella was supposed to save my marriage. It sounded so naive, so desperately foolish that now, looking back, I want to sink through the ground. But then, on that evening, it was my last resort. I generously sprinkled saffron, remembering how its golden threads once colored not only rice, but our whole life, bright, fragrant, full of fire. 40 years. We had been together for 40 years. Rual brought me here, to this land of promise, where I left not only my native shore, but also my name, that Bianca who laughed loudly and danced the tango until dawn. I became simply Mrs. Garcia. A wife. A mother. The shadow of a successful husband, and then they stopped noticing the shadow altogether. Last year, a glacier settled in our house. Rual spoke to me in monosyllables, slept with his back to the wall, and his touches, if they happened at all, were quick and cold, like a handshake with a stranger. But today was our anniversary. And I, like a complete fool, decided that spicy paella and the sounds of that very tango we once danced to in Buenos Aires would melt this iceberg that I put on my best dress. I turned on the music. And at the very moment when the first piercing notes of the bandoneon sounded and I placed the steaming dish on the table, he appeared in the doorway. My Rual. And with him, her. The world slowed down like a broken record. She was young. Indecently young. In a dress that cost more than I allowed myself to spend on clothes in a year. Rual looked at me with the expression one gives to tired furniture that is long overdue for the trash.
Bianca, stop this circus. Turn it off.
I froze with the ladle in my hand, feeling the heat from the paella burning my fingers. The only thing that was truly hot in this room. Rual, what does this mean? My own voice sounded strange, thin as cracked glass.
This is Karen. My woman.
I froze with the ladle in my hand, feeling the heat from the paella burning my fingers. The only thing that was truly hot in this room. Rual, what does this mean? My own voice sounded strange, thin as cracked glass.
This is Karen. My woman.
The words fell like stones. My woman. And me? What was I? A nanny? A housekeeper? A guard for his wallet. He walked into the living room and turned off the music with irritation, killing the last notes of our tango. A deafening silence fell, broken only by the bubbling of my worthless paella.
I haven't loved you for a long time, Bianca. You've become background noise. Karen rekindled in me the passion that I had forgotten with you.
I looked at him and saw not the ardent young man who had sworn eternal love to me, but a stranger, a cruel old man with cold eyes.
This house is big. We can live here together. After all, everything here was bought with my money. Unless, of course, you want to leave and make life difficult for everyone.
Everything here was bought with my money. Yes. With his money, which I earned together with him, working as his translator, secretary, accountant, psychologist. Investing my soul, my strength, my life in his business. Meanwhile, Karen had already walked around the living room like a mistress, ran her finger along the shelf, assessing the dust, and glanced at me with contemptuous pity.
Oh, how sweet. This tastelessness can be removed.
At that moment, I stopped breathing. They didn't just steal my present. They came to erase my past. I don't remember how I ran to my room. A room that was probably no longer mine. The door slammed shut, and I leaned against it as if I could hold back the chaos that had invaded my home. And then I just sank to the floor, unable to stand. There were no tears. Just a dry, spasmodic lump in my throat. My life flashed before my eyes. The move. A foreign country. Paulo's birth. Sleepless nights when I sat with my sick child while Rual built his empire. Endless dinners for his partners, where I was the decoration, speaking 2 languages. Everything I did was for them. For the family. For the sake of that fragile concept of us. And us crumbled to dust with the appearance of the long-legged Karen that I crawled to the bed and buried my face in the pillow, finally allowing myself those quiet, animal sobs that tore at my chest. These were not tears of sadness. They were tears of collapse. The collapse of my whole life, all my sacrifices, all the love I thought was as unbreakable as a rock that I fell asleep there, on the edge of the bed, in my best dress, accompanied by muffled laughter coming from the living room. Laughter in my house. On our anniversary. Morning arrived with the aroma of expensive coffee, which I did not purchase, and Karen's loud, bubbling laughter. I crawled out of my room, feeling like a ghost in my own home. They were sitting in the kitchen, my kitchen, and Raoul was looking at her in a way he hadn't looked at me in 20 years. A lump formed in my throat at the sight, and I darted into the living room, hiding in a corner where they couldn't see me, and then I heard it. She was talking on the phone, not hiding, her voice ringing like broken crystal.
Yes, my dear, he just can't refuse me. Yesterday he gave me a watch. Not a cheap one, but a Swiss one for 7,000. Can you imagine?
7,000. I did the math in my head. 7,000 is a year's worth of electricity, water, and gas bills for this house. That's 3 new refrigerators. That's 2 years of trips to the hairdresser, which I gave up so I could save up for that expensive whiskey set for his birthday.
And before that, there was a necklace, a designer dress. He says I brought back his youth. Well, I'm giving it back as best I can.
My stomach clenched. I stood leaning against the wall, listening to this girl with a price tag on her forehead listing the cost of my humiliation. And the worst part was that I remembered all my gifts. Modest, practical things. Socks. Thermal underwear. The book he wanted so badly, which he never opened. He never wanted anything of mine. He only wanted what he could buy for himself, or for someone like Karen, and then she said something that made my blood run cold.
I'll take care of the old lady. Don't worry. I already have a plan. In a couple of weeks, she'll run away from here herself. Rual has almost agreed to send her to that geriatric nursing home I told him about. I'm telling you, soon this house will be all mine.
Geriatric nursing home. Send her away. Like a tiresome dog being given to a shelter that I was shaking. No. No. That won't happen. My son. Paolo. He won't allow it. He'll understand. He'll remember whose mother sat with him at night by his hospital bed, whose hands were raw from scrubbing the grass stains out of his first pair of jeans, whose prayers seemed to save him when he nearly drowned in that lake. I slipped out of the house like a thief, unable to bear another second of this charade. The road to my son's house flew by in a blur. I prayed that he would hug me, that he would say, "Mom, everything will be okay." It was my last straw. The door was opened by my daughter-in-law, Claudia. Her fingers were adorned with a fresh, blood-red manicure. She didn't even deign to look at me.
Oh, it's you, Bianca. Hi. Paolo. Come in. Paolo. Come here.
My grandsons, 2 beautiful boys, sat staring at their phone screens. Their fingers feverishly ran across the glass. They didn't look up. Not one of them. Paolo came out of the office with a frown on his face. He didn't offer me a seat.
Mom, what's wrong? I have a meeting in half an hour.
And I blurted it out. Rambling, gasping for breath, with tears in my voice, I told him about Karen, about the boarding school, about my father's betrayal. He listened. And sighed. The way you sigh when your child is bothering you with nonsense again.
Mom, I'm sorry, but what do you want me to do? These are your problems with Dad. Sort it out yourselves.
He's kicking me out of the house. I whispered, not believing my ears.
No one is kicking you out. You just need to accept the situation and find common ground.
Common ground? With her. I couldn't find the words. But my son's voice was firm, cold.
Father provides for her, just as he provides for us. He pays our mortgage, $3,000 a month. Another $1,500 for the children's private school. For Claudia's car. For her trips to the beautician. Do you want me to go against him and deprive my family of all this?
He rattled off the amounts as easily as if he were listing groceries. And at that moment, I understood everything. I understood completely that I looked at my son, this grown, successful man, and saw the little boy who used to demand a new toy without thinking about how many nights he would have to work for it. I'm your mother, I said, my voice trembling.
And he's my father, the one who gives us a future.
It was that simple. The future of his family turned out to be more valuable than his mother's past. Something inside me broke. Bitterness rose to my throat, bitter as bile. I understand everything, Paolo. My voice suddenly became quiet and clear. You didn't sell your mother. You just put her up for auction. And your father offered the highest price. I turned and left without letting him say a word in response. The door slammed behind me with a sound that seemed to bury my last hope forever. I walked down the street, and there were no more tears. There was only anger. Deep, icy, all-consuming. And despair, black as tar. They were all cut from the same cloth. And I was left alone. Completely alone. I walked without paying attention to where I was going. The city park with its forced cheerfulness was left behind. There was a deafening ringing in my ears, not from the street noise, but from the icy silence that reigned inside after my son's words. 3,000 a month, 1,500, the future. He didn't just betray me. He presented me with a bill. It turned out that the price of a mother was $5,500 a month. My feet carried me to where our American dream had once begun, El Puerto, a tiny bar with worn leather chairs and a scuffed counter, where Ruel, his friend Richard, and I had once celebrated our first big deal. I pushed open the door and was enveloped by a familiar smell, old wood, expensive whiskey, and ghosts of the past. I ordered a tangy, the same cocktail we had drunk on that memorable night. I took a sip. The tart sweetness burned my lips. I sat and peered into the semi-darkness, trying to make out the outlines of those people, the passionate Roll, the witty Richard, the very same Bianca who laughed with her head thrown back. But the ghosts did not appear. They had been erased. Erased by Karen. Erased by her son's indifference, and then, rummaging through my purse in search of a handkerchief, I stumbled upon it. An old, worn business card. Richard Jones. Lawyer. On the back was his handwritten note, my personal number. For emergencies. He jokingly handed it to me 10 years ago. The emergency had arrived. My hand was shaking as I dialed the number. My heart was pounding in my throat. I was taking a desperate risk. What if he was still on Roll's side? What if he called him right away and reported my panic?
Hello?
His voice was the same, warm, with a slight hoarseness. Richard, it's Bianca Garcia. There was silence on the other end, so loud that I could hear my own treacherous breathing.
Bianca. What's wrong?
I need to see you. To talk.
I'm not sure that's a good idea. Your husband. We've had our differences.
Not differences, Richard. My voice faltered, but I pulled myself together, clenching the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. He ruined everything. He brought another woman into my house. My son. Paolo. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to speak more firmly, more coldly. They're throwing me out like old junk. And I won't let them do that. But I can't do it alone. I said it. I didn't beg. I didn't complain. I issued a challenge. I said, I won't let them. Silence again. But this time, it was interested.
Where are you?
At El Puerto.
Wait there. I'll be there in 20 minutes.
He arrived early. When he saw me, he slowly shook his head, not with pity, but with some kind of bitter understanding. We silently went up to the second floor, to an abandoned smoking room where no one could hear us. He sat down opposite me, his gaze heavy and intense.
Tell me everything.
And I told him everything. Without tears, with the same icy clarity that had come over me after talking to my son. About the paella. About the tango he turned off. About Karen's plan to send me to a boarding school. And about the auction where Paolo sold his mother. Richard listened without interrupting. His face grew darker and darker.
I warned him. A year ago, when I caught them in the office. I said, Raul, you're destroying everything we've built. And he looked at me and said, you're fired. And if you tell anyone, I'll destroy you.
And you chickened out? I asked bluntly, looking him in the eye. There was no room left in me for social niceties that he wasn't embarrassed. He smiled.
No, Bianca. I just stepped aside to regroup. He thinks money and power give him the right to do anything. But he has an Achilles heel. A very serious one.
What is it? My breath caught in my throat.
Not here. Come to my office tomorrow. At 10. I have some documents. I think you'll find them interesting.
I took a napkin. The paper was cold. He deserves it, I said, my voice sounding as steady and clear as the strike of a steel blade.
This isn't revenge, Bianca.
For me, it is, I snapped, standing up. Sweet, cold, and the only thing possible. Stepping outside, I put my hand in my pocket, clutching the napkin. For the first time in 24 hours, I wasn't just going with the flow. I was holding a card in my hand. A card for my war. And I was ready to start it. Richard's office was located in an old but respectable building that smelled of money and antiquity. I was greeted by a pleasant young secretary.
Mrs. Garcia, Mr. Jones is waiting for you.
She said with a warm, almost obsequious smile, as if I were the most important client in her life. That she said with a warm, almost obsequious smile, as if I were the most important client in her life. This flash of respect was so unusual after the hell I had been through at home that I was momentarily taken aback. Richard met me at the door of his office. He looked focused and serious.
Bianca, come in. I think you're ready to see what I have in store for you.
There was a folder on his massive oak desk. It wasn't thick, but it exuded such heaviness that it seemed to be cast in lead. I sat down, clasping my hands on my knees so he wouldn't see them shaking.
Yesterday you said that Raul has an Achilles heel. Fraudulent documents for startup capital. Not just fraud, a whole pyramid of lies. And you, Bianca, are at the very bottom of it.
He opened the folder and slowly, like a surgeon demonstrating a failed operation, began to lay out the documents in front of me. Old, yellowed. Declarations. Financial reports. Loan applications.
This loan was obtained for a non-existent asset. Raul provided false income statements for a company in Argentina that did not exist. And this one was approved after we bribed an official. I was the one who handed over the envelope. And you, Bianca, you were the one who signed this.
I took the sheet of paper he offered me. It was a power of attorney to manage certain funds. I looked at my own signature, made long ago. Sweeping, confident. I didn't even read it carefully at the time. Raul, dear, just show me where to sign. I trusted him like God. I didn't know, I whispered, my voice betraying me.
But the law doesn't care whether you knew or not. You signed it. You are an accomplice. If this comes to light, Raul faces deportation and prison. And you, Bianca, will face at least a huge fine and the confiscation of everything you have acquired in this way.
My mouth went dry. The room began to spin. All my life, I thought we had achieved everything through hard work. But it turned out that the foundation of our prosperity was built on mud, lies, and my own careless signatures. He didn't just betray me as a wife. He set me up as an accomplice. He used my trust as a weapon against me. Did he? No? I managed to say. Does he know I'm in danger?
He knows very well. I warned him myself. I said, Raul, you're setting Bianca up. And he replied, she would never go against me. She's too weak and loves me too much.
The words hung in the air, hot and sharp as knives. Too weak. Yes. I was weak. I let him control me, trusted him like a fool. And he built his life on my weakness, and in that moment, the last remnants of doubt, the last ghosts of pity for him evaporated. They were burned away by the cold white flame of rage that I looked up at Richard. There was no fear or confusion in his eyes anymore. What should we do? I asked. My voice was calm and clear. Richard nodded approvingly.
We have two options. The first is to report this anonymously to the tax and immigration authorities. Royal will be deported, his business will collapse. But it will also affect you.
And the second? The second was written in his eyes.
The second, we use this as leverage. We give him a choice. Either he voluntarily, quietly, and without scandal transfers all his assets to you and leaves the country, or you go to law enforcement with a clear conscience, as a victim he dragged into his schemes. Given your background and complete ignorance, there's a chance the court will treat you leniently. But him.
I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Rual's face floated before me. Arrogant, smug. The face of a man who is confident that he has everything under control. The face of a man who considers me weak, the second one, I said, opening my eyes. I want to look him in the eye when he realizes everything. The next few weeks passed in a thick fog, through which only occasional rays of chilling satisfaction broke through. Everything happened exactly as Richard had predicted. He arranged a business meeting with Roll. I entered the office with him. My husband's face when he saw us was priceless. It showed shock, anger, and, for the first time in many years, fear. The conversation was brief and tense. Richard laid out the facts. I silently stared at Roll, not looking away. He tried to threaten me, pressure me, accuse me of ingratitude. But when Richard placed copies of those very documents with my signature on the table, he broke down. He slumped into a chair as if his spine had been removed. 2 weeks later, the Immigration Service received his voluntary application to renounce his status and leave. He tried to contact me one last time, begging and threatening. But I didn't respond. I watched him pack his suitcases. Karen, realizing that paradise was not waiting for her, but poverty and exile, threw a tantrum and grabbed my best jewelry as a parting gift. I didn't care that my son called me in hysterics, screaming that I had ruined his future. I listened to his cries and thought only one thing: your future was built on a lie that could have destroyed your mother. Richard, as promised, transferred all assets to my name. The house, the accounts, the business. Now it was all mine, but that wasn't all. The most important thing was in my bedroom, in the top drawer of the dresser. A folder with my son's name on it. Silence. The first morning when there were no footsteps in the house except mine. No loud laughter from Karen, no heavy breathing from Raoul, no sound of his voice giving orders. Only the ticking of the clock in the living room and the singing of birds outside the window. I stood after breakfast and looked at the clean, sparkling table where I had once planned their lives, cried over their ingratitude, and counted other people's money. Now I was counting my own. There was a folder on the table labeled Paolo. I opened it. Richard had prepared everything perfectly. Account statements, contracts, payment schedules. Everything I had paid for all these years, believing that I was ensuring a happy future for my son. Mortgage. Private school. My daughter-in-law's road map. Every line was a monument to my blind maternal love, which they took for granted. That I picked up the phone. My finger didn't tremble. The first call was to the bank. Hello, this is Bianca Garcia. I want to cancel the automatic payment on the mortgage for the house at. I clearly dictated my son's address. Yes, cancel it completely. Starting this month. The voice on the other end confirmed the transaction. 5 seconds. And my son's future was no longer my concern. The second call was to the administration of St. Augustine Academy, a private school. Hello. This is Bianca Garcia. I am the payer for the tuition of Paulo Garcia Jr. and Luis Garcia. I am informing you that starting next month, payment will not be made. Yes, you understood correctly. Cancel all my payment orders. The third call was to the bank where Claudia's card was linked to. Block the credit card in the name of Claudia Garcia. No, it's not lost. It's been cancelled at the request of the account holder. I hung up the phone. No anxiety, no doubts. Just cold, crystal clarity. They taught me that themselves. They taught me that love is a commodity and family is a transaction. Well, now the terms of the deal had changed. The next day, as soon as I finished my morning coffee, a storm broke out in the house. The door flew open, and Paolo and Claudia appeared on the threshold. His face was contorted with rage, hers with hysterical bewilderment. Paolo immediately started shouting.
Mom, what have you done? The bank is calling. The mortgage hasn't been paid. The school is demanding money. Claudia's card isn't working.
I know, I replied calmly, taking another sip of coffee. I did it. They froze, unable to understand my calmness. Claudia hissed.
Are you crazy? How are we going to live?
The same way everyone else does, I shrugged. Earn and spend our money.
Is this a joke? Are you taking revenge on me? For not taking your side against your father?
I slowly got up from my chair. I was shorter than him, but at that moment I felt taller. No, son. I'm not getting revenge. I just stopped paying your bills. You said it yourself, every man for himself. I followed your advice.
But that's different. We have children. We have obligations. You can't just take everything away.
I'm not taking anything away, I said quietly, but so that every sound I made was clearly audible. I'm stopping giving. Do you feel the difference? You could have had everything if you had shown even a drop of filial love. But you chose the deal. And with deals, my dear, there is always a risk. Today is your loss.
We're not leaving. We're going to live here. This is our home.
I didn't argue. I walked over to the phone on the wall, picked up the receiver, and dialed a number. Hello? Yes, this is Bianca Garcia at. My home has been broken into. Please send a squad. Yes, they are threatening me and refusing to leave. That I hung up and looked at them. The police will be here in 10 minutes. You have a choice, leave now with dignity or be removed by force. Decide. They looked at me with such horror and hatred, as if they were seeing me for the first time. Perhaps that was the case. They saw the real me for the first time. Not the Bianca who paid their bills and silently endured humiliation, but the one who was capable of standing up for herself.
You bitch.
No, I corrected him. I just stopped being your ATM mother. I only became a bitch when you decided that my love could be measured in dollars. They left. They slammed the door, taking their indignation and shocked anger with them. I went to the window and watched them drive away, waving their arms and shouting something to each other. Silence reigned in the house again. But this time it was completely different. It was not empty, but full. Full of my choice. My strength. My freedom. That I was left alone. But for the first time in many years, I was not lonely. Silence became my refuge. Not the deafening silence that descended after Raoul left, but a deep, rich silence, like aged wine. I filled it with sounds I chose myself, the rustling of pages in an old book forgotten on the shelf, the rustle of a brush on canvas, a hobby I had abandoned 30 years ago, the rebellious chords of a guitar that Raoul called cacophony. I drank my morning coffee on the terrace, and its bitter taste was the taste of my freedom. I looked at the garden, where every tree had been planted by my hand, but always at his direction. Now it was mine alone. Richard called. His voice, calm and firm, became a pleasant counterpoint to my new solitude. He invited me to dinner, to the theater. His interest was sincere, devoid of the flattery of the past or pity. But I politely declined, not because I didn't like him, but because I was learning to be alone with myself again. I was afraid that his company, his kindness, would simply become a new cage, albeit a gilded one. I had to rebuild myself first. Brick by brick. Without Raoul's blueprints and without a budget approved by my son. One day, I got in the car and drove off, not knowing where I was going. The road itself led me to the very geriatric boarding house, paradise for the golden years, where Karen and he had planned to send me. I stood by the perfectly manicured lawn, behind the immaculate fence, and looked at the well-groomed, empty-eyed old people being wheeled along the paths by a nurse. Their lives were quiet, safe, and utterly meaningless. That could have been my end. That I was overcome with a chilling, animalistic terror. But not from the sight of this place. From the realization of how easily I could have ended up there. How I almost did. That I turned around, got in the car, and drove away without looking back. It was the last ghost I needed to exorcise. That in the evening, I went into my dressing room. The air here smelled different, not of his cologne, but of mothballs and old wood. In the far corner, lost among more practical items, hung that very dress. Silk, the color of ripe plums. The dress of hope, in which I waited for Roll on our last anniversary. It still retained the ghostly scent of paella and shattered illusions that I took it off the hanger. The fabric was cold and slippery, like snakeskin. I didn't tear it or burn it. I carefully rolled it up, packed it in a box, and wrote with a marker, "For charity." I gave it away along with my past. Maybe it will bring someone else luck. Then I went to the stereo. I rummaged through the records for a long time until I found the one. Tango. The very soundtrack to our past that Rual had so rudely cut short. I put the needle down. The piercing, melancholy sounds of the bandoneon filled the room, striking my temples with a familiar pain that I closed my eyes, expecting old wounds to reopen. But nothing happened. The music was still as beautiful and sad as ever. But it was no longer mine. It was just music. Someone else's story about someone else's love that I didn't turn it off. I walked over to the large window in the living room and pressed my palms against the cold glass. Far, far below, the lights of the city were coming on. A strange city that once rejected me and then became my prison. Now it was just a backdrop. My silent, indifferent, and therefore infinitely beautiful refuge that I was alone. Completely alone. But for the first time in many, many years, I was not lonely. I was whole. And in this new, bitter, hard-won wholeness, there was more strength and peace than in all those years that I habitually called family and love. My war was over. Not with a resounding victory, but with a quiet, final truce with myself. And life began. Just life.
If this story has stirred up a storm of emotions in you, then our work on this project has not been in vain. Support us by subscribing and liking, it will help the channel grow. And in the comments, I suggest discussing, which of Bianca's actions do you consider the most just? Canceling her son's mortgage? Taking away her daughter-in-law's credit card? Or something else?